Hello, everyone. Right now, we're going to talk about karmic purification from the standpoint of ancient sacred texts. And I wanted to read to you a few passages that I found from the Dictionary of All Scriptures and Myths by G.A. Gaskell. This is a classic reference guide to the sacred language of the religions of the world. And it had some interesting things in here that I thought summarized and expressed in a very short manner. What is this purification pathway that I'm always talking about? I wanted to share this with you. Thought it would help. Because what it does is it lays out for us what it is that we are trying to achieve through the understanding of our karma, through the understanding of purification, the path, and how is it done energetically. All the things that I'm always talking about is expressed very well in this. So the first is coming from the selection under karma, and I want to share this with you. The law of causation and interaction between the higher and lower planes to bring about equilibrium between them and gradually raise the soul. It binds the lower self to the higher and arises through the union of the will with knowledge of a moral standard involving choice. It estimates the experience of the ego and is expressed in effects. Treasure in heaven on the Buddhic plane. It relates to the process underlying spiritual evolution and adjustment upon the higher planes. As the soul goes forth into the life of experience, so upon each succeeding level, the account is squared, as it were, so that each successive stage carries it to its relatively appointed place. This idea underlies all religions. And the Christian who looks for compensation in heaven or fears punishment in hell is holding crudely and unintelligently the truth that what we sow here, we reap the result of upon entering the next state. The spiritual law of cause and effect in the soul is made to yield just and right results, so that throughout evolution, perfect balance between higher and lower is maintained. And the outcome of it all is stored away in the soul's inner being. As long as the lower nature remains, karma is incurred. But when the lower nature is put away, then the fruits of the spirit are reaped by the ego on the Buddhic plane. And then there are some other quotations in the same selection. This one from the Laws of Manu. An act, either mental, verbal, or corporeal, bears good or evil fruit. The various transmigrations of men through the highest, middle, and lowest stages are produced by acts. And again, going back to the text itself, motives arising from opinions in the mental body, from desires in the astral body, and from sensations in the physical body, accepted by the will operating on the mental plane, lead to particular conditions of incarnation on the lower planes. These are karmical results actualizing in 3 stages, which may be called good, bad, and indifferent. There's a quote here from Hughes, who is a Sufi mystical poet. Do not complain, O soul, of the injustice of the beloved. In other words, the karmic aspect of the divine law. For such is thy lot. And then from the writings of Phillips Brooks, a sermon entitled An Evil Spirit from the Lord. It says, The essential truth of heaven and hell is ineradicable in the universe. There is the mighty image of God standing in the center of all things, and all things have to touch him. And as all things touch him, according to their characters, he becomes to them blessing or curse. He is the happiness of obedience to the law of truth, and the misery of disobedience throughout his world. He looks with sympathetic joy or with profoundest pity on the souls he judges. But the judgments both come from him. The right hand and the left hand are both his. Burning there like the sun of all the world, he must be a comforting and guiding light or a consuming fire, one or the other, to every soul. And I would add to that that God is both to every soul, because in the purification journey, we experience both. We experience the guiding light of God, but the consuming fire of God, which wipes out our iniquities, wipes out our energetic disturbances, our flaws, our failings, and brings us to a higher mind. And this brings me to another listing in this text. And under here, this is actually the listing for gales, blasts of wind blowing down crops. And it says here, and this is relevant, and you'll see how as I continue through it, because this explains the process of how souls actually bend, move, and sway into alteration and transfiguration into God. Symbolic of diverse erroneous doctrines and opinions of the lower mind, which proceed from prevalent illusions and which stifle the growth of the higher emotions. So in these ancient sacred texts, the gales, the blasts of wind which blow down crops, are symbolic of diverse erroneous doctrines and opinions of the lower mind. And those proceed from prevalent illusions, which stifle the growth of the higher emotions. And what are we always talking about at the Out of Body Travel Foundation? How we are trying to bring ourselves to a higher mind. And so from Empedocles, Book 1, by Fairbanks, it says, "Thou shalt break the power of untiring gales, which, rising against the earth, blow down the crops and destroy them. And again, whenever thou wilt, thou shalt bring down their blasts back, and thou shalt bring seasonable drought out of dark storm for men, and out of summer drought thou shalt bring streams pouring down from heaven to nurture the trees. And thou shalt lead out of Hades the spirit of a man that is dead." And the author, Gaskell, states, "The self shall overcome the winds of doctrine which arise, and striking the lower self, the earth, destroy the sprouting emotions. And moreover, the self shall recall such doctrines. And the self shall turn the falsity of the lower planes into relative truth for the mind's sustenance, and from the mind's ignorance enable it to know. And from the spiritual effects of the higher self upon the personality shall proceed the truth which shall serve to enable the qualities to be raised. And from the lower planes, the underworld, the relatively dead self, the lower mind, the mind of man, or lower personality, shall be led upward to the light." So these are speaking again of all the things that we are trying to demonstrate and show in the Mysteries of the Redemption and all of the other books that I've written, and are available for you at outofbodytravel.org to download for free. And then when we talk about this further, we go to the offering on creation, or emanation of the spiritual and material universes, which is defined here as the potential and unmanifest becoming the actual and manifest in a scheme of being in which the spiritual and mental precede the astral and physical. And so then what it says here, we start with Alice Gardner, who says, what creation is to God, that is thought to man. Creation is, in fact, the thinking out of a thought. Then it goes into a quotation here from the Zohar. The deity began the creation by forming an imperceptible point. This was its own thought. Then it turned itself to construct within its own thought a mysterious and holy form. Finally, it covered this ideal form with a rich and shining visible garment. That is the entire universe, of which the name necessarily enters into the name of Elohim. And then the next thing comes from Isaac Meyer from his writings on the Kabbalah. The Zohar also says, all that which is found or exists upon the earth has its spiritual counterpart also to be found on high. And there does not exist the smallest thing in this world which is not itself attached to something on high and is not found in dependence upon it. The basic element is the idea of a perfect invisible universe above, which is the real and true paradigm or ideal model of the visible universe below. The idea of the upper ideal, but real and true, changeable and untrue. Let me go back and say that again. The idea of the upper ideal, but real and true, and the lower apparently real, but in truth changeable and untrue, goes through the entire apocalypse of St. John, is in St. Paul, and in the epistle to the Hebrews. And the next quote comes from G.R.S. Mead, one of the great writers on Egyptology, from a book he wrote on Hermes, saying, all things that are on earth, O Tot, are not the truth. They are copies only of the true, for all that alters is untrue. It does not stay in what it is. All that is subject unto genesis and change is verily not true. Finally, from the Svetas Upanishad, it is at the command of him who always covers this world, the knower, the time of time, who assumes qualities and all knowledge. It is at his command that this work, creation, unfolds itself, which is called earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So what this does is it kind of gives you an understanding now of purification from a little bit of the sacred texts, just a little. There's a lot more in the sacred texts, but this is a really nice synopsis, a little clarification, a little summarization. So I hope this is helpful. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.